Hello everyone, this is Greg Isaac, Mabel Ramirez, and Daniela Cordero presenting to the International Project Management class on the importance of languages and dialects in launching a global adult literacy program. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, being literate means that you are educated and cultured, which is further defined as meaning that you possess the ability to read and write. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, defines literacy as the ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, and compute using printed and written materials associated with varying contexts. Areas with populations that are literate are more likely to have healthier individuals who earn higher incomes. In addition, literate areas also see lower crime and unemployment rates, higher quality jobs, and greater levels of community involvement. Studies of areas that have rising levels of literacy levels corroborate and support this information. As technology has advanced and education becomes more easily available around the world, illiteracy levels have gone down significantly. However, there are still large populations of illiterate adults who suffer the consequences detailed previously. The mission of this program is to further reduce the number of illiterate adults around the world. Despite large improvements in the expansion of basic education and the continuous reduction of education inequalities, there are substantial challenges ahead. The poorest countries in the world, where basic education is most likely to be a binding constraint for development, still have very large segments of the population who are illiterate. For example, in Niger, the literacy rate of the youth, ages 15 to 24 years old, is only 36.5%. Before preparing to implement a global adult literacy program, it is important to note the trends in global literacy rates over time. According to data collected since the 1800s, the overall global illiteracy rate has gone down significantly, from nearly 90% in the early 1800s to only 15% in 2014. As you can see in this chart, this has not always been a steady trend. For instance, global illiteracy rates grew in the 1930s and 1940s, but since then, these levels have continued to decrease, if at an unsteady rate. Adult literacy began to be taken seriously after the Enlightenment in Europe during the 1500s. As you can see with the countries represented in this graph, adult literacy rates have been on an overall steady increase over the past 500 years. While the countries represented have citizens that speak other languages, each of these countries has their own official mother language. It is interesting to note that they all follow the same general trend in rising rates of adult literacy over time, especially compared to the global rates, represented in dark blue, which show that worldwide adult literacy rates are lower than these individual countries and have not always been increasing. The following map shows literacy rates around the world using recent estimates published in the CIA Factbook. As can be seen in this map, all countries outside of Africa, with the exception of Afghanistan, have literacy rates above 50%. Despite progress in the long run, however, large inequalities remain, notably between the sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. In Burkina Faso, Niger, and South Sudan, the African countries at the bottom of the rank, literacy rates are still below 30%. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, language can be defined as the words, their pronunciation, and the methods of combining them used and understood by a community. In other words, it is a system of communication used by a particular country or community. This differs from a dialect, which refers to a particular form of a language which is peculiar to a specific region or social group.
According to the BBC News China country profile, the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949 after the Communist Party defeated the previously dominant nationalist Kuomintang in a civil war. The Kuomintang retreated to Taiwan, creating two rival Chinese states, the People's Republic of China on the mainland and the Republic of China based on Taiwan. China is the world's most populous country with a continuous culture stretching back nearly 4,000 years. Many of the elements that make up the foundation of the modern world originate in China, including paper, gunpowder, credit banking, the compass, and paper money. China now has the world's fastest growing economy and is undergoing what has been described as a second industrial revolution. Eight major languages and more than 600 dialects are spoken throughout China. On 2000, Mandarin Chinese, known as Putonghua, which means common speech, was declared as the country's official language. Mandarin Chinese is spoken by approximately 75% of the population and is one of the six official languages of the United Nations. With 56 ethnic groups, China possesses over 100 languages and dialects. The most widely used are Cantonese, used in Guangdong Province, Hong Kong, and Macau; Hakka, spoken in Fujian Province, Taiwan Island, countries in Southeast Asia such as Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia; Shangawa or Shanghainese, a dialect spoken in Shanghai and the surrounding regions; Sichuanese, spoken in Sichuan Province; Gan, a dialect spoken by an estimated 22 million people and is mostly common in Jiangxi Province. Shan, Zhu, and Min are spoken in certain geographical areas and by specific ethnic groups. In this map, we can appreciate the language and dialect spoken in each region of China. By 1990, China had a literacy rate of just 78%. On 2010, China's literacy rate was just over 95%, which represents a great improvement. 5% of Chinese adults are illiterate, means an estimated 54 million people ages 15 and older are unable to read and write a simple sentence. China has dramatically reduced the gap between male and female literacy. Among China's youth, the gender gap is almost non-existent. The literacy rate is 99.7% for young men and 99.6% for young women.
According to UNESCO, as of 2016, China's literacy rate was approximately 96%. This was an impressive improvement for the country, which as recently as 1990 had a literacy rate of 78%. Even though just 4% of Chinese are illiterate, that still means an estimated 54 million people aged 15 and older are unable to read and write a simple sentence. Furthermore, the gender gap between women and men is approximately 4%, where 98.2% of men are literate, while women are 94.5% literate, according to recent statistics published by UNESCO. Even though this gap has been decreasing lately, it is still an indicative that a literacy program is needed. Moreover, regional disparities in literacy rates still persist in China. For instance, Tibet region accounted at 37.33% of the 4% illiteracy rate in China. Hinga is the second region most illiterate in the country, followed by Guizhou. These examples show the importance of a literacy program in those underdeveloped regions. In fact, according to recent research, illiterate population mainly live in remote and depressed areas where minorities inhabit. There are different limitations in launching a literacy program in China. Some of them are rural education. China has made great inroads to better rural education. such as lessening the cost of primary and secondary education, sending or subsidizing books, among others. However, there is still a significant gap between the rural and urban education systems. Gender disparity. Male children are still chosen to receive more education than female children, especially in rural settings. Population. With over 1 billion citizens, educating the huge population is decidedly challenging. Think about the majority culture and tradition of majority people, the difficulty to monitor rural populations, and the millions of migrant children living in cities with bare-bones education, and you can understand how difficult educating the country is. Different languages and dialects. In China, there are several languages and dialects grouped in 7 classifications, which are Mandarin, Wu, Yu, Ming, Yihan, Hakka, and Gan. These languages and dialects differ from region to region, which makes this factor an important limitation in a national literacy program. Disabled students. China's reported disabled population of 70 to 70 million represents approximately 5% of the overall population, one third of which resides in rural areas. Disabled students are not given the same educational rights as other children, and at schools that do specialize in caring for the disabled and those with learning disabilities are expensive and are almost non-existent outside urban areas. These are some recommendations when launching a literacy program in China. In order to develop a successful program, it is extremely important to understand the different languages and dialects in the country because it is a crucial factor in the learning process of each individual. The literacy program might want to concentrate in teaching the Mandarin language as it is the official language of the country, but always respecting the different dialects that people use based on the region they live in. It is also extremely important to ask the participation of national institutions such as the Ministry of Education because it will help the program to have a bigger impact in different regions of the country, mostly in those areas which are less developed. Moreover, to sustain a primary focus on impoverished areas, national minority, and women's literacy work. Lastly, to have a better understanding of the culture is a must. When launching a program such as this, it is crucial to know about the region and its manners because this will help in the successful development of the program and to create a greater closeness with people from those regions.